Good Saturday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for June the 3rd. Today we are reading together Deuteronomy chapter 29. Deuteronomy chapter 29. Let me get the text up on the screen for us, and we will read along together here in Deuteronomy chapter 29. This is the renewal of the covenant. The first verse really, many commentators recognize that this probably fits better with the end of chapter 28. Probably should be chapter 28 and verse 69, because it is a summarizing statement of everything that has been said in this writing up until this point. Really spans verse 1 or chapter 1 and verse 1 through chapter 28 verse 68 concerning these are the words of the covenant. This is everything that Moses is speaking to you that you need to recognize as being a part of this covenant. And now, having said all this, he is going to gather Israel together, and they are going to renew this covenant with Yahweh with some additional instruction included, some warnings and such here within that text. So let's read that together here in Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse number 1. Deuteronomy 29, verse number 1. These are the words of the covenant that Yahweh commanded Moses to make with the Israelites in the land of Moab. In addition to the covenant he had made with them at Horeb, Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, "You have seen with your own eyes everything Yahweh did in Egypt to Pharaoh and to all his officials and to his entire land. You saw with your own eyes the great trials and those great signs and wonders. Yet to this day, Yahweh has not given you a mind to understand, eyes to see, or ears to hear. I led you 40 years in the wilderness. Your clothes and sandals on your feet did not wear out. You did not eat food or drink wine or beer, so that you might know that I am Yahweh your God. When you reach this place, King Sihon of Heshbon and King Og of Bashan came out against us in battle, but we defeated them. We took their land and gave it as an inheritance to the Reubenites, the Gadites, and half the tribe of Manasseh. Therefore, observe the words of this covenant and follow them, so that you will succeed in everything you do. All of you standing here today before Yahweh your God, your leaders, tribes, elders, officials, all the men of Israel, your dependents, your wives, and the resident aliens in your camps who cut your wood and draw your water, so that you may enter into the covenant of Yahweh your God, which he is making with you today, so that you may enter into his oath, and so that you may establish, and so that he may establish you today as his people, and he may be your God as he promised you, and as he swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am making this covenant and this oath not only with you, but also with those who are standing here with us today in the presence of Yahweh our God, and with those who are not here today. Indeed, you know how we lived in the land of Egypt and passed through the nations where you traveled. You saw their abhorrent images and idols made of wood, stone, silver, and gold, which were among them. Be sure there is no man, woman, clan, or tribe among you today whose heart turns away from Yahweh our God to go and worship the gods of those nations. Be sure there is no root among you bearing poisonous and bitter fruit. When someone hears the words of this oath, he may consider himself exempt, thinking, well, I will have success even though I follow my own stubborn heart. This will lead to the destruction of the well-watered land as well as the dry land. Yahweh will not be willing to forgive him. Instead, his anger and jealousy will burn against that person, and every curse written in the scroll will descend on him. Yahweh will blot out his name under heaven and single him out for harm from all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant written in this book of the law. Verse 22, future generations of your children who follow you, and the foreigner who comes from a distant country will see the plagues of that land and the sickness Yahweh has inflicted on it. All its soil will be burning waste of sulfur and salt, unsown, producing nothing, and no plant growing on it, just like the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, which Yahweh demolished in his fierce anger. All the nations will ask, has Yahweh done this to the land? Why this intense outburst of anger? Then people will answer, it is because they abandoned the covenant of Yahweh. the God of their ancestors, which he had made with them when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. They began to serve other gods, bowing in worship to gods they had not known, gods that Yahweh had permitted them to worship. Therefore, Yahweh's anger burned against this land, and he brought every curse written in this book on it. Yahweh uprooted them from their land in his anger, rage, and intense wrath, and threw them into another land where they are today. The hidden things belong to Yahweh our God, but the revealed things belong to us and our children forever, so that we may follow all the words of this law. Deuteronomy chapter 29. Again, I think this beginning verse number 1, these are the words of the covenant Yahweh commanded Moses to make with the Israelites in the land of Moab, in addition to the covenant he made with them at Horeb. This is specifically referring to everything that has been written previously, everything from the beginning of this writing up until this time. These are the words of the covenant. So then we shift then to these words having been shared with the people. We shift from them having been shared to them now needing to respond to what has been shared. So he summons all of Israel. He summons all this together, and he says, he uses basically beginning of verse 2 going through verse 9, he uses the past experiences that they've had where they've seen Yahweh's grace. He shares this with them, and he's going to use this as a means of encouraging them and motivating them to respond appropriately to what they have seen. So you have seen what he did to Egypt and his officials in all of his land. You saw the great trials and the signs and the wonders. Yet up until this time, verse number 4, yet to this day, Yahweh's not giving you a mind to understand, eyes to see, or ears to hear. There's some difficulty there in translation. This could say, Yahweh has not given you a mind to understand, eyes to see, or ears to hear until this day. So maybe that is in reference to the past generations. Now, the past generations were not faithful to the covenant because they had not taken everything that they had experienced and responded to them appropriately. But now Moses is directly drawing their minds to this and saying, hey, you need to consider this, and you need to recognize it, and you need to respond appropriately. You need to understand, you need to see, you need to hear. And again, the constant command in this has been to Shema, to hear and to listen and to obey and to respond. So they've not done this up until this day, but you need to beginning today, you need to respond appropriately to these things. I think that might be what is being referenced here in verse number 4. Because listen, I led you. Here's further evidence. I led you, Moses said, throughout the wilderness. You had clothes and sandals that did not wear out. You did not eat food or drink wine or beer so that you might know that the Yahweh is your God. You didn't have what people might think is necessary beyond this journey. He supplied you with manna and water. That's all you needed. You survived on that. Why? Because God provided it for you. Your clothes and your sandals, you didn't need new ones. Why? Because God provided those things for you. And whenever you came across enemies like Sihon or Og, that whenever they came out to battle against you, that you defeated them. You defeated them by God's grace. And in fact, you took their land and gave it to part of your people. So considering all these graces that God has shown you, therefore observe the words of the covenant and follow them so that you will succeed in everything that you do. Take what Yahweh has done and respond to it appropriately. So here, therefore, everybody that is gathered here, you need to claim God's grace for your own and allow it to be effectual in your lives. How do you do that? Well, you need to enter the covenant. You need to not only enter the covenant, you need to enter the oath. You need to be his people and allow him to be your God. And in doing this, in your leaders, your tribes, your elders, your officials, all the men of Israel, your dependents, your wives, resident aliens in your camps, everyone needs to enter into this covenant and needs to be ready to respond to this covenant and to live by this covenant. But not only you who are here, but this is going to be something that is enduring. This is going to be enduring. I am making this covenant and this oath not only with you, but also with those who are standing here with us today in the presence of Yahweh our God, and with those who are not here today. So those who are going to be coming in the future. This covenant is for them too. It needs to be a perpetual covenant between God, Yahweh God, and you, his people. That is the necessary response. Moving on to verse 16. The not necessary response, the worst response you can have, is to rebel and become disloyal to Yahweh, because you've already passed through the land of Egypt. You've passed through the nations. You've seen all of their debauchery. You've seen their wickedness. You've seen their chasing after idols and paganism and such. Do not follow them. Be sure that no man, woman, clan, or tribe among you today whose heart turns away from Yahweh your God and goes and worship the gods of the nations. Do not do that. Do not rebel. Be sure that there is no root among you bearing poisonous and bitter fruit. Make sure of that. But know that if there is, if someone ignores the instructions and the warnings, if someone allows for their stubborn heart to guide them in what they do, if they do pursue paganism and idolatry, then know that this stubbornness will lead to destruction of the well-watered land and the dry land, that Yahweh will not forgive him. His anger and jealousy will burn against that person, and all the curses that have been written in this scroll, all the curses that have been spoken about in this covenant, they will come upon him. You've been warned. Do not rebel. But if you persist in this, and if that type of attitude spreads, then know there's also going to be a collective consequence for rebellion. That future generations and foreigners are going to see the state of the land, and they're going to wonder, the nations are going to ask in verse 24, why has Yahweh done this to the land? Why this intense outburst of anger? And the people are going to answer, well, it's because they abandoned the covenants. They began to serve other gods. And for this, God punished them severely. God's anger, Yahweh's anger, burned against this land. He brought every curse written in this book on it, to the extent that he uprooted them from this land in his anger, rage, and intense wrath, and threw them into another land where they are today. Now, where they are today, that's not saying that this is being written at that time. I don't believe that Deuteronomy was written long after these events, way off in like captivity land. I think it would have been written much earlier than that. But what's being discussed here is that in the future, when these questions are asked, then you'll know this answer. Then you will know why they are where they are in the present day, while they're asking these questions and wondering how things have gotten to where they've gotten. The text concludes verse 29, the hidden things belong to Yahweh our God, but the revealed things belong to us and our children forever, so that we may follow all the words of this law. The hidden things. Lots of ideas about what the hidden things are. Maybe in context, though, the hidden things refer to God's providence, his divine providence, how he is working all of this out. That belongs to him. But the revealed things, the instructions, the statutes, the commands, the teachings, those have been given to people so they can follow them, and so that they might follow them, and in following all the words of this law, that they might be blessed in this way. So here in Deuteronomy 29, we have the renewal of the covenants, a reminding of the covenant, a reestablishing of the covenant, so that no one is with excuse. Oh, I didn't know about this. No. We've just spent a long time, Moses says, I've spent a long time talking to you. And someone has spilled a lot of ink writing these things down so that you might know you've not only heard me speak them, but if you're coming down the road, you have read them here in this text. And you are responsible for them. Don't worry about how somehow God has been so patient into allowing you to get to this place, even though you have been rebellious in the past. Don't continue in that. Maintain covenant loyalty. Maintain faithfulness. Maintain covenant loyalty. Follow the words of this law, and in doing so, you will be blessed. That's what we have here in Deuteronomy chapter 29. Now, tomorrow, we are going to read a little bit in chapter 30 about some hypotheticals about returning from captivity, because that's where this kind of ends in verse 28. It's as if they are in captivity and how they can return from that. And then there's going to be basically Abraham's version of Joshua 23 and 24 about choose this day whom you will serve. We'll see that at the end of chapter 30 as well. Hope you could tune in for that reading on tomorrow, Sunday, June the 4th. I appreciate so much you taking time to read along with me today. I hope you have a great rest of this absolutely beautiful Saturday. It's a beautiful day. Hope you are able to enjoy God's blessings, and hope to see you tomorrow for our reading, and especially hope to see you in person tomorrow for our Bible study worship assembly. If you have any questions or comments about this text, again, always feel free to leave those below. Take care, and God bless.